Have you seen this kind of dress before? Or a lot of times you see it in beaded skirts, where you see the bottom of the skirt, like this bottom right here, with individual fringes, and you wonder how it is fixed. Yes, it's simple, but there's a specific arrangement and calculation that we use. So this is the dress I'm going to be beading to show you how it is done. However, when I did it, the measurement was not clear, so I'm going to use this paper and illustrate how it is. And this method I'm going to show you is easy to use when you're beading on a plain outfit, but whether it's plain or not, you can use this method. So what I did here is that I'm going to decide the differences in the length I'm going to use. Am I going to use ½ inch, or am I going to use 1 inch? So if I'm going to use 1 inch, I will just mark 1 inch all the way down from the beginning to the end. So if this was a fabric, for instance, I'll use a fabric chalk or a fabric pen, but since I'm doing it on a paper, I'm going to be using a pen. So that's another 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. So I'll just mark it down from there to the beginning to the end of the fabric. Well, in this case I'm using a paper, right? So I'll do that for the next line. However, when you want to do it, because you don't want it on the straight, you want it to look full, so you want the next line to be such that it's going to be in between the first one. So this is what I mean. So what we do now is you're still going to measure the 1 inch, but you're going to now shift it. So this 1 inch is going to now fall in between. So what we have here is that I'm going to be marking 1 inch in between the first two, but under as well. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm shifting the tape now to be in middle, and then I mark. So that's another 1 inch. That's another 1 inch, that's another 1 inch, and that's another 1 inch. I'm going to do that to the end. So after doing that to the end, if you notice, I didn't measure the distance between the first line and the second line, right? I just wanted to show you how it is. So what we do is we measure the first one, and then we'll measure the other line. So let me show you how the other line is going to be measured, right? Don't mind that thing I did there. It was a mistake. I shouldn't have put it there, so ignore that first line. I hope that makes sense. So I'll flip the tape right now and show you. So in this case, you can also choose to make it 1 inch, ½ inch, or as much as 2 inches if you want. In this case, let me use ½ inch to show you, right? So I already measured the first and the second. I didn't measure it, so we're going to skip that one. So that's 1 inch. The next one I'm going to do is ½ inch. So I'm going to be using ½ inch, right? So I have another ½ inch there, ½ inch, ½ inch. I'll do that all the way to the bottom. This is going to now show where the lines are going to fall under. So if I'm going to now measure the width, that's the other side, it means that I'm going to be following this line. So watch how I'm going to be measuring the next line, right? So this next line I'm going to be measuring now is going to now fall under, it's going to now be the same level with the first one. So I've done the first line, I've done the second line. The next one I'm going to do is going to be on the same level with the first line. I don't know if that makes sense. If I'm not making sense, or if what I'm saying you're not understanding it, you can ask me a question. So that's 1 inch, that's another 1 inch, that's another 1 inch, that's another 1 inch. I'm going to do that to the end. So the next thing I'm going to do is go to the next line as well, shift it, and keep measuring like that. So what you have is something that looks like several triangles if you decide to draw triangles. So that's it. So I finished it. So I'm going to be implementing that on the dress. However, I did the dress directly, so I measured it, the point, before I started it. So what I did for this particular dress was that I drew lines. So I measured the first one 2 inches, and then I measured 2 inches from the bottom part of the dress and drew a line. I can make it 1 inch if I want, or ½ inch, depending on what the client wants. But in this case, it was 2 inches I started with. So I drew a line like that from the beginning, round the dress, right? After doing that, I went ahead to start attaching it. Remember, I did it bit by bit, right? So for this particular dress, I used 1 inch. I started with 1 inch, but I changed my mind later. I made it ½ inch. So I'm going to start there right now. That's the first one. I'll attach the bead to it, fix the bead. The bead I used here was 4 inches long. This one, there is no hard and fast rule. You can make it as long as you want. You can make it as short as you want, depending on the design you want to create. But for this particular dress, I used 4 inches. So I'm fixing the bead into the needle right now to make the individual fringes. And then, you know, I'll tie it down and move on to the next. Now, the difference between that's 4 inches, right? The difference between the first and the second, like I said, was 1 inch. But you can use whatever you want. So I'll just tie it right now and move on to the next. Quickly, let's go. Yeah, so this is what it looks like. So the next now is 1 inch I use, like I said, and then I'll just attach it right there. So I've attached it right there already, and I'll go ahead and do the rest right now so you see. Meanwhile, it's important to know that when you're fixing individual fringes like this, it is actually better to have the length wider and the width smaller. That way it's easier for your work to look fuller. I have finished it, and this is what the first line looks like, right? So I'm going to go straight to the second line right now, and as usual I'll draw a line. So I said that the difference was 1 inch, right? Yes. So that's the difference I'm going to use for the length. Right there, I'm going to draw a straight line all the way round it, and I'm going to start attaching it. So I'm going to put it in between, like I mentioned, and put it up there, right? In between there, up there, in between those two, and up, in between those two, up. That's what I'm going to use round, and that's how I actually did it. I did not measure it dot dot dot, right? I just used it that side. No, you're not an expert. I'm not an expert yet. I think I'm still a work in progress. Well, you know what I mean. Yeah. So when you're used to it, so that's it. I've done the first, second, and third line right there. That's the first line. That's the that's the third line, right? 1 inch difference. So this is second line, and that right here is the first line. So if you look up, you see that there is a fourth line that I drew right there, and that's where I'm going to fix the fourth line, and I'll keep going and keep going and keep going. If I show you everything I'm doing it, you'll be tired. So this is when I've done like 6, 7, 8, 10 lines, maybe, I'm not sure. This is what it looks like right here, and I'll show you what it looks like finished. I lost that finished version. Like, I don't know what happened to it. I don't know. Well, I just told them to quickly do this for me, and anyways, I'm sorry for the quality, but I'm really sorry. But this is what it looks like finished. You're not saying you can. I know you have an idea of what it actually looks like. So I forgot to mention, for the last 2 lines, I made the difference in the width 1/2 inch. So by the time I kept going, by the time I got to the top, that last part where the waistline is, I made the difference 1/2 inch so that it look close and finer and more beautiful and all of that. So this is what it looks like when she wore it. I did a tutorial for the top as well, but I lost it as well. Thanks so much for watching my video. I'll see you in my next one. Bye.